Welcome, everybody, to another fantastic episode of CUE Live. We are starting out today on Friday, because tomorrow is Fall CUE. I am here with our executive director of CUE, Mike Volmert.
Interim executive director.
I know. I'm trying to say something there, Mike. You know me. We're super excited about tomorrow. We have a fantastic event, over 150 sessions. Amazing educators from across California and beyond are going to be spending some quality time with one another, digging deep, learning, and finding that passion to keep sharing out and continuing to do what we do on a daily basis. But we have a phenomenal opening keynote tomorrow. This keynote is going to just bring up so many different ideas and feelings and questions that you are not going to want to miss it. But don't take it from me. Don't take it from Mike. Take it from our opening keynote, who is here right now. Dr. Rachelle Rogers-Ard is here with us today. Dr. Rogers-Ard, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm well, thank you. And I'm excited to be here as my phone goes off.
Well, hey, this is a live broadcast. Things happen. We are perfectly understandable. And you are a very busy individual. In fact, you have a long history in education. Can I give a little bit of history, a little bit of background about what you've done and what you're currently doing?
Yes. So Oakland Unified School District was my stomping grounds for about 23 years. I was a teacher in high school in Deep East Oakland, and then became an administrator at the district level, ran a program designed to recruit and retain local permanent diverse teachers, and then did organizational development and a variety of things in the human resources and all those things. And then left to go to the county office, where I thought I was going to have a larger impact, frankly. And then after the George Floyd murder, I noticed that my high school son said, like, "Mom, what you doing? Like, what are you doing?" And I decided I better answer the call. And so one of the things I do really well is train and facilitate. And so I began consulting, and I call it Harvest. I named it Harvest Consulting because I believe I'm planting seeds that I may not reap or may not see the harvest for, but our future generations certainly will. So I am an anti-racist leadership development specialist and super excited to be doing work with CUE, with our executive director, who wants to be interim, but I'm just going to name him Executive Director Mike, who has really been an excellent leadership partner to say, this is the work that we need to do at CUE, right? We need to start questioning some of our policies and processes, and what does it mean? What role does race really play at CUE? And how do we want to make the pivot, right? And so I'm super excited to be in the midst of this work.
And Rachelle, as am I, but I have to say that when I got called by the CUE board to fill in as an interim, that was one of the first conversations that the board had was, what are your feelings about this issue? What are your thoughts about making CUE part of that conversation in a meaningful way, and how can we get about that? And it wasn't much longer after that we contacted you and began the conversations about doing this work. And I just want to thank you personally for those conversations, and on behalf of CUE, this is going to be a bellwether moment for the community, and it's going to be a challenging and rewarding sort of path and journey that we're embarking on. So it's not going to happen overnight. We're going to take this we've got you for a year, and then we'll carry that on after that. But I'm not sure what we means. So that I'm sort of voting for the organization. You keep telling me that I'm stuck. We'll see how that goes. But It's going to be.
We'll talk offline. We'll talk offline, Mike.
It's going to be challenging. I am very much looking forward to it as a rewarding sort of both personal and organizational experience. But CUE's in a position where our job is to make a difference, and I think this is going to be right in that wheelhouse.
No, absolutely. And I love the name of your consulting firm, because harvest it's a beautiful word, because there's so much that goes in to a harvest. There's so many individuals that are parts of the tilling of the fields, of the growing of the soil, of the trimming of the harvest, so that it can grow and prosper. It's not just, hey, look what we harvested. It's look at all the work. Look at all the pain. Look at all the struggle that went into this beautiful harvest. So that's a very packed word. And I love that CUE is working with yourself, because we will reap what we sow. And we are trying to sow so well, and by bringing you in to make our harvest bountiful. So I just want to say thank you. And that's a beautiful.
I need you to go before me wherever I go, because that is exactly it. Like, I really took some time to think about, well, what's this, title going to be? And people were like, well, name it after yourself. Call it, Rachelle Rogers-Ard Consulting. And I was like, this work is so much larger than I, right? Larger than I am, and larger than just what I bring to it. To your point, Joe, really, and to your point, Mike, about CUE, it takes an understanding of all the different people to get in and till the soil. First, we need to understand, we need to define, what it is we're talking about. We often don't even name race, right? So we do things like equity and, and calling it, right? So we need to define it, right? And in so doing, we create shared definitions. So as an organization, we can all say the same thing when we say race or racism or microaggressions or anti-Blackness. We're all saying the same thing. And then once we've defined, we need to then start talking about, what do we do to disrupt little pieces? And I like to say, if I'm a disruptor and I introduce myself and I link arms with Joe, who's a disruptor, and I link arms with Mike, who's a disruptor, the three of us begin to dismantle, right? And then once we've done that, then it's about, how can we dream and design something new? What can CUE be? How might CUE be the model of the ways in which we help our teachers and our schools move into being actively anti-racist? It would mean that we need to dream and design something we haven't done before, but that's where the creativity comes. So I really believe in my theory of action is define, disrupt, to dismantle, so that you can dream and design. So that's that. And it takes more than me, to your point with the harvest, it takes all of us tilling that soil.
And that story, that beautiful story, is why we asked you to do our opening keynote, right? Because this conversation needs to happen at a grander scale, right? And we're working organization-wise, and also inviting some of our key stakeholders in our affiliates to join in these conversations as well. But our members and our attendees, we want them to be exposed to these defined words, to these conversations, which is why your keynote tomorrow at 10 a.m., titled Race in Schools, Swimming in the Waters of Whiteness, is going to be a very interesting conversation. And the title is very eye-catching, right? It may bring people, but like, yes, we get to talk about this. And others like, what are they going to talk about? And right, and they're leading forward kind of situation. And so you're going to get people listening intently, conversing quite a bit in the chat. So can you tell us a little bit, without giving everything away, tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking with and what we can expect to experience during your keynote tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Well, let's be clear. I only have an hour, so it's not going to be the full.
That's
right?
not enough time.
Right. 1 hour with me and everything is done.
Yeah.
It's going to be what I would call a general overview of what's the purpose of schools, right? And we understand why schools were created. We understand that we are working in the backdrop. That's why I say the swimming in the waters of whiteness. We understand that it's all created on this backdrop of whiteness. And so therefore, for those of us who are in schools, what do we need to do differently? What are the pieces that we need to be looking at? What are the things that are really impeding us from being actively anti-racist in schools? And in what ways are we silencing particularly our African American students and the adults who are our colleagues? And so I'm doing and I trust me, a really high level overview. Once again, it's a high level overview. I have an hour. But I think what will be key is I'm going to try and ask a few questions. And while folks will be populating chat and doing things like that, I'm also going to ask folks to go in breakout rooms and sort of grapple with some of the concepts that are presented. One of the things that CUE is doing, as you alluded, Joe, is we're having these conversations. We're starting from my first piece on my theory of action around defining. So we're looking at key terms. What does it mean to talk about race, racism, whiteness, anti-Blackness? What is the caste system? All of those pieces we're going to get into. But for tomorrow, really, I want to ask our key site-based personnel, what's your role? What's your do different? What are you going to do? If we understand that learning is social before cognitive, then in what ways are we creating safe spaces for our diverse students and the adults who serve them? I think a lot of times at schools, we focus on students, right? Educational equity, making sure we're doing great classroom environments. But then research indicates that our adults experience the same microaggressions that they do at workspaces, right? And when at work, I mean, not school related, right? And so in what ways are we more cognizant of that? And in what ways do we name the whiteness that is the foundational pieces of school, from our curriculum to our over 80% white, mainly female teachers nationwide? In what ways are we interrupting those pieces, right? So asking some of those questions, and then I don't like to talk for a long time, so getting people in some breakout rooms so they can chat about it, I think, is the first step.
And I think the timeliness of this for me is really significant, Rachelle. We've had this COVID thing. You may have read about it.
I don't know. What is that new?
Kids haven't been to school for a while. Now we're coming back into classrooms. And if we're not consciously sort of thinking about something, then we revert to habitual behaviors, the way we've always done things. And if we're winding up with all of these SEL issues that we want to address with our kids because they've been isolated, they've been away from these social environments that we put them in with respect to schools and classrooms and that sort of thing. I think this is the perfect time to kind of kickstart this conversation and start taking a hard look at the ways that we unintentionally sort of marginalize certain people. Some kids will tend to sort of fade into the background. And that's not what we want. We want everybody to feel like they're part of that social fabric, that they've got a voice, and being conscious of that, and then working on ways to address that is, in my mind, probably paramount over and above learning loss. I'm really concerned about these social sorts of issues that are going on.
Right. It starts with the educators in the room.
Yes.
I often say it's really hard to create an inclusive environment if you don't understand what it means to be inclusive. It's really hard to create an anti-racist classroom if you yourself aren't being actively anti-racist. So it starts with the educators, the classified staff, the principals, right? It's the adults in the system. Because, when I talk to young people, and my youngest son is 17, and I often talk to his friends. It is interesting how they view race. It is very different than, I'm of a certain advanced age. So as I was growing up and what have you, like the way that I still hold some of those old tropes is very, very different than our young people. So I actually believe we need to start with the adults, because I think our young people are are seeing things differently. And I could be naive because I'm in Northern California. And
well, here I am in Southern California, and I can tell you about my daughter, she's 25, so she's a little bit older than your son, but sort of in that same category. Her views and her viewpoints are much different than the way I grew up.
On a variety of levels, right?
Yeah.
Because of social media, because of a lot of exposure, right? And I like to think, I mean, it's my hope, it's the reason I do this work, that our next two generations will really move this work forward. We'll really start to look at what does it mean to look at oppression, to look at racism, and to address it much, much, much differently than we have in the past. So, and so because of that, it is necessary that the educators in the room, in our classrooms, in our schools, in our school districts, are doing the work themselves so that they cannot do harm to our children.
Yes. No, and I always say, like, we have to stop the proliferation of the previous, right? The things that we've grown up thinking are the ways that they should be aren't always, that's not the way it should always be, right? We always need to look internally and externally around us and be like, let's reassess the situation for the now, not the way that I knew it growing up, but for the now, because as you were saying, our students, our kids are experiencing it completely differently, almost with a wider set of eyes than we ever had. So we have to listen to our students because I think sometimes they see things more clearly than we do because we're clouded by our past, our previousness, right?
And our beliefs, right? This is rooted in beliefs, and beliefs lead you to behavior. So it can be very, I think I have a certain amount of empathy for the notion that shifting my entire belief structure could feel fearful. I could be fearful around that, right? Yeah. And so, and yet what happens is because our beliefs drive our behavior, if we really truly want to be anti-racist and be actively anti-racist, it means certain people who are in power will experience loss. And that is also fearful, right? What does it mean to look at our systems and say, no longer will our systems be particularly run by white men? And that means that there's going to be loss there. And that's, that can be fearful. So I get all of those pieces. And again, we'll not be delving into that much tomorrow in my 1 hour, but I will be calling the question, right? Like, number one, what role does race play in our schools and our classrooms? And secondly, right, what should do different? Like, how are you, if you've decided to be actively anti-racist, and then if you haven't, I think you need to decide to move on because frankly, you're doing harm.
Yeah, when listening to yourself and our conversation at the beginning, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with one of our local farmers, and they grow peat. And he was clearing his entire field, ripping out all of his peach trees. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Aren't you going to ruin your next year's harvest? This harvest wasn't very good. And it was going down for the last couple years. He goes, what I'm doing is I'm not ripping out my trees. I'm creating possibilities for my next year's harvest, my next year's after that. And so he cleared the field to create opportunity. Not because he wanted to get rid of anything, because he wanted to grow something even better. And I think when people hear the word dismantle, they think of it as, what, I'm doing things wrong? I'm not doing things right? What do you mean? It's like, no, we're trying to clear the field to make the newest and brightest and the greatest come up to the surface. And I think when we think of it that way, that's a beautiful analogy. And that's why I think going back to the name Harvest, I think it's beautiful because there's so much that goes into it. And it kind of hits on it just gives me all the feelings just thinking about that. It's just a beautiful.
I've got to take Joe with me on my tour because he has explained harvest much better than I have. So we're taking Joe with us on the speaking tour wherever I go.
Let's go. Let's do it. Well, Dr. Rachelle Rogers-Ard, thank you so much. I am super excited about tomorrow. I'm going to be, we're going to be there ready and willing, and we hope everybody listening is going to be doing that as well. But I also wanted to say thank you so much for taking time out of the night before that you're going on to do this keynote, to talk a little bit about it with us and to give us that quick little preview. And again, thank you so much for working with CUE and all the amazing work you're doing with organizations all across the country.
I'm looking forward to this tomorrow and for our future work with CUE. I think CUE is nimble enough to really, really make some change.
I do as well. Well, thank you so much, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Wow. That was fantastic, Mike. I am literally excited for tomorrow, not just because we have so many great speakers and so many great sessions and so many great opportunities, but because we get to kick off the session with that really thought-provoking keynote from Dr. Rogers-Ard. What about you, Mike? What are your thoughts at this moment?
The keynote, the keynote for me is huge. It's great to have her sort of kick off our fall CUE. But for me, it's sort of the first of a number of conversations that at different levels of our community, we want Dr. Rachelle to be engaging with our entire membership. This is work that the board's been really clear. They put a very clear statement on the board CUE.org website about CUE's stance with respect to this issue, the work that we'll be doing with affiliate leaders and with the board and with CUE staff. And then that will extend to a conversation with all of our community. And personally, I'm really excited about that. I think this is a conversation that needs to be had. I think we as educators are really the people that need to initiate this. We need to engage with our students in ways that make sure we're not marginalizing or excluding anyone. And so this work, it's not going to be easy work. It's not going to be quick work, but it is important work. And I'm really excited to be part of that.
No, I am as well. And everybody who's attending tomorrow, you can go in to the attendee hub right now, and you can start a conversation about this right now. You can start a conversation about the discussion that you just heard. You can start a conversation about what you're expecting to experience at Fall CUE tomorrow. You can start a conversation just about how excited you are to be amongst some amazing educators. So definitely go into your attendee hub and check out the hallway chats, which is found underneath community. Hallway chats, and all you have to do is click on that little plus button, and boom, you can begin that discussion right there as well. And also, don't forget, everyone, it is virtual, so you can sign up for Fall CUE still by going to CUE.org/fall and register today. There's no travel needed, no hotels needed, and you get 2 amazing days worth of sessions, and you get to see those sessions again all the way up until December 31st of this year. We like to say that you're going to get to experience Fall CUE all the way up to 2022, right? So this is just going to be a great way to meet your friends, see your friends, learn amazing things, and just start a great conversation. So again, thank you so much. We're super excited to start tomorrow. 9 a.m. is when our affiliate meetings begin, and 10 a.m. is when the magic starts with Dr. Rachelle Rogers-Ard and her great keynote starting at 10 a.m. We cannot wait